Hello and welcome back to Reform Thinking. We are really glad to have you with us again.
It's good to be here.
We're doing something today that I honestly think is one of the most intellectually stimulating exercises a thinking believer can do.
Oh, yeah.
We're taking a stack of sources, well, really one core source. We are cracking open C.S. Lewis's classic Mere Christianity.
And not just the whole book. We're really zooming in.
We are. We're focusing entirely on Book 4, Chapter 1. The goal here is to extract the core theological insights from a chapter that, well, it effectively rewrites the definition of what it means to be a Christian.
It's a huge pivot point in the book. I mean, up until this chapter, he's been talking about morality, general behavior.
Right, be nice, don't divorce, be charitable, that kind of thing.
And then he just stops. And he steps into what he calls the science of God.
And the subject for this deep dive is making and begetting.
Which, right off the bat, might sound a little abstract.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And I want to address you, the listener, right now. You might be thinking, making and begetting. That sounds maybe a bit dry.
And that reaction is actually the whole point. It brings us right to the tension Lewis addresses in the very first paragraph of this chapter.
There is this very modern, very real aversion to the word theology.
Oh, absolutely. It's the hurdle we have to clear. The common feeling is, don't give me creeds, give me deeds.
Or I don't need doctrine. I just need to love my neighbor.
Exactly. There's this sense that theology is academic, maybe even a barrier to authentic faith.
People prefer the simple kindness of the golden rule. Or, the spiritual feelings they get from a beautiful sunset.
They think that's the real stuff. And the books, the doctrines, are just dead weight.
But Lewis pushes back on that, and he pushes back hard. So our mission for this deep dive is really twofold.
Okay.
First, we need to understand why Lewis argues that doctrine is like a map, and why throwing away the map is, well, spiritually dangerous.
And second,
we need to uncover the critical technical difference between being made by God and being begotten by God.
and that second point, that's where the stakes get incredibly high. This isn't just Lewis playing with words.
Not at all.
As we're going to see, it distinguishes between being a statue, a carved stone image, and being a living son.
It's the difference between an artwork and a child.
A profound difference.
So let's start with that first part, his defense of theology. Lewis opens this chapter by admitting that everyone, and he means everyone, warned him not to write it.
Right. He says he was told, and I'm quoting here, "The ordinary reader does not want theology. Give him plain practical religion."
It's kind of patronizing advice, isn't it?
It is. The assumption is that the average person, the ordinary reader, is just too simple-minded to handle the heavy lifting of thinking about God's nature.
That they just want the warm fuzzies.
And I love Lewis's refusal to play that game. He basically says, I reject that advice.
He doesn't think the ordinary reader is a fool. His line is, you are not children. Why should you be treated like children?
It's so refreshing. He respects his audience. And then he defines theology very simply. He just calls it the science of God.
And the logic that follows is, I think, airtight.
It is. If you want to think about God at all, and most people do in some way, you should want the clearest, most accurate ideas available.
Of course. You wouldn't settle for plain practical astronomy if it meant believing the moon was made of green cheese just because it was a simpler idea than orbital mechanics.
You want the truth, even if it's complex.
To illustrate this, he tells a story, an anecdote about an RAF officer.
This is such a relatable story. I think we've all met this person.
Or maybe, at times, we've been this person.
Possibly. So Lewis has given a talk to the Air Force, and this old, hard-bitten officer stands up to object.
And the officer's point is basically, I have no use for all that stuff. He says he's a religious man, but his religion is based on direct experience.
Specifically, he talks about being out alone in the desert at night.
The desert experience. He says he felt a tremendous mystery. And, I get that. You're out there, the stars are huge, the silence is heavy, you feel small, you feel a presence.
Sure, it's a real experience.
And then the officer says, and this is the key part, that is just why I don't believe all your neat little dogmas and formulas about him. To anyone who's met the real thing, they all seem so petty and pedantic and unreal.
It's a powerful objection. It really is. It's rooted in sincerity. And Lewis, to his credit, doesn't just dismiss the man.
No, he validates him. He says the officer probably did have a real experience of God in the desert. The feeling was authentic.
He agrees that turning from that massive, mysterious desert experience to a written creed, like the Apostles' Creed, it can feel like a letdown.
It feels like turning from something real to something less real.
And this is where Lewis introduces the central analogy of the entire chapter.
The Atlantic Ocean versus the map.
Exactly.
So walk us through this. How does a map solve the problem of the man in the desert?
Well, Lewis asks you to think of that desert experience, or in his analogy, walking along the beach and watching the waves, as the direct experience.
It's real. It's fun. You feel the salt spray on your face. You hear the roar of the ocean. It's exciting.
Right. Now, contrast that with a map of the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay.
The map is just a piece of colored paper. It's flat. It doesn't roar. It isn't wet.
By comparison, it looks very, very unexciting.
So if you just compare the two things side by side, the crashing waves versus the piece of paper, the waves win every time.
Just like the officer's desert mystery wins, in his mind, over a dry theology textbook.
Precisely. But, and here's the Lewis twist, he argues that the map is superior, or at least absolutely necessary, for two big reasons.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is that the map is based on collective experience. That piece of paper isn't just some artist's drawing. It is the synthesis of hundreds of thousands of people who have actually sailed the real Atlantic.
That is such a crucial point. Your personal walk on the beach is just a single isolated glimpse. It's just you, your feelings, that one moment.
But the map is the result of captains and explorers and sailors all fitting together their masses of experience. It's the communal wisdom of the ages, written down.
So theology isn't one person's opinion. It's the church's collective experience of navigating the reality of God.
Exactly. And the second reason is even more practical. It's about destination.
Where you're trying to go.
Right. If you want to go anywhere, Lewis uses the example of getting to America, or more specifically, Newfoundland. The map is absolutely necessary.
Walks on the beach are great, but they won't get you across the ocean.
You can stare at the waves all day long.
Yeah.
You can feel the mystery of the sea until you're blue in the face, but you will never reach the other side without that map to steer the ship properly.
And this is where it really gets interesting for our faith. He connects this directly to how we view God.
The mystical feelings, God in the flowers, God in the music, the desert mystery.
Those are like the beach. They're wonderful, they're stimulating, they're beautiful, but they lead nowhere on their own.
That's right. Doctrines are the map. The Westminster Confession, the Nicene Creed, these things are not God. Lewis is very clear on that.
The map is not the ocean.
The map is not the ocean. But these doctrines, they are based on the experiences of those who were truly in touch with God, prophets, apostles, the church throughout history.
And if you want to get to Newfoundland, which in this case stands for eternal life or true union with God,
You need the map.
I think that's the kicker. He says, and this is a hard truth for our culture, you will not get eternal life by simply feeling the presence of God in flowers or music.
It's a tough pill to swallow. We love the feelings. We love the vibes of spirituality.
But Lewis,
Yeah.
and really the Reformed perspective in general, insists that feelings are not a substitute for truth.
You can't cross the ocean by just enjoying the view from the shore. And there's a safety element, too. Lewis points out you won't be very safe if you go to sea without a map.
A vague religion all about thrills and feelings is attractive because it's, as he says, all thrills and no work.
But real Christianity involves setting sail. And for that, you need the charts. You need to know where the rocks are. You need to know the proper course.
And that is what theology provides.
That's the argument.
So what does this mean for us today in the modern world? Lewis transitions into talking about the practicality of dogma.
He makes a point about education that I think is even more relevant now than when he first wrote it.
Oh, for sure.
He notes that in the old days, when maybe education was less widespread, people could get by with a few simple ideas about God. They just followed tradition.
But today, everyone reads. Everyone has a podcast. Everyone discusses things. We are just bombarded with information and ideas.
And he warns that if you don't listen to theology from the great tradition, it doesn't mean you'll have no ideas about God.
No, it means you'll have bad ideas.
Bad ideas, muddled, confused, or just out-of-date ideas.
That's such a smart insight. There's no vacuum in your head. You will fill your mind with something.
And Lewis points out that many of the new and exciting ideas about God that pop up in popular culture, they're actually just old heresies.
Ancient heresies that real theologians examined and rejected centuries ago for very good reasons.
Believing in some popular, fuzzy religion is like deciding to believe the earth is flat. He calls it retrogression. It's going backward, not forward.
And one of the biggest examples of this, one of the most common bad ideas floating around, is what I'd call the moral teacher trap. Lewis attacks this head on.
Oh, this is the classic one. You hear it all the time.
It's the popular definition of Christianity you get from people who don't really want to deal with the supernatural claims.
They'll say, well, I think Jesus was a great moral teacher, and if we only took his advice, we could establish a better social order, stop wars, and fix the world.
And Lewis, being fair as always, he concedes the point. He says, well, that is quite true. If we all followed Jesus' advice, the world would be a much happier place.
But he doesn't stop there.
No. And here comes the counter-argument, and it's devastatingly simple. Lewis asks, and so what?
We've never followed the advice of the great teachers. Why on earth are we likely to begin now?
Right. We've had Plato, we've had Aristotle, we've had Confucius. They all gave fantastic moral advice.
And we haven't followed them either.
So Lewis argues that if Christianity is just good advice, then it's of no real importance.
There has been plenty of good advice for 4,000 years. A little bit more isn't going to magically change the human condition.
If we can't even follow the elementary lessons from the past, why would we suddenly start following the most advanced and difficult teacher of all?
It's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Here's more good advice. This time it'll work.
And Lewis says, no, that is not it.
Yeah.
That's not what Christianity is. The real Christian writings, the Gospels, the epistles, they say something totally different.
They make radical claims.
They don't just say, be nice. They say, Christ is the Son of God.
They say his death saved us from sin.
They say that those who trust him become sons of God.
And he adds those little parenthetical comments, whatever that means, to show that he knows these are difficult, strange concepts.
He compares it to modern physics. You know, physics tells us things about the universe, about quantum mechanics that seem impossible or paradoxical to our common sense.
But we accept them because scientists tell us they are describing reality.
Theology is the same. It's describing a reality that is behind the world we touch and see.
And because it's describing a complex reality, it's bound to be difficult. If it were simple, it probably wouldn't be true.
And that claim that we can become sons of God is shocking. Lewis anticipates the question, wait a minute, aren't we all sons of God already? Isn't God the Father of all mankind?
And this question brings us right to the core distinction of the chapter. This is where the science of God really hinges on one specific definition.
The difference between making and begetting.
This is where we have to put our thinking caps on. This comes straight from the ancient creeds of the church. Begotten, not created.
And he's careful to clarify, this is not about the virgin birth. This is about something that happened before all worlds, before time and nature even existed. It's about the eternal relationship within the Trinity.
So let's define the terms, just as Lewis does. What does it mean to beget?
To beget is to become the father of something of the same kind as yourself.
He uses simple biology to explain it, which is brilliant. A man begets human babies.
A beaver begets little beavers.
A bird begets eggs that hatch into little birds. The key is that the offspring shares the same nature as the parent.
Okay, that's clear. So what about making or creating?
To make is to create something of a different kind from yourself.
A bird makes a nest. The nest is not a bird.
A beaver makes a dam. The dam is not a beaver.
A man makes a wireless set. Or, to use a more timeless example he gives, a man makes a statue.
The statue analogy is the one he really leans into, and it's perfect for this.
A sculptor can carve a statue that looks incredibly like a man. It has the shape of a man, the features of a man, but it is not a man.
No, it can't breathe. It can't think. It's not alive. It belongs to a completely different order of existence. It is stone. The sculptor is flesh and blood.
So now we apply this to God.
What God begets is God. That is Jesus Christ. He is of the same nature as the Father, God from God, light from light, as the Nicene Creed says.
But what God creates is not God.
That's us, humans. We are made. We are creatures.
This is a massive theological distinction.
Yeah.
We so often hear people say things like, we are all divine, or we all have a spark of the divine within us.
And Lewis, and certainly the Reformed tradition, would say, hold on a minute, let's be precise here.
We are like God, but we are not of the same kind as God.
Exactly. We are like the statues. We resemble him. We are made in his image, just as a statue is made in the image of a man. But we do not share his specific type of existence by nature.
We're not little gods, we're artifacts.
Divine artifacts, yes, but artifacts nonetheless.
To really drive this home, Lewis then walks us through the different levels of resemblance. He shows how everything God made has some likeness to him, but it's a sort of hierarchy.
It's a fascinating list. He starts at the very bottom with space.
How does space resemble God?
In its hugeness. It's a symbol of his greatness, his immensity. But of course, space is empty and God is full of life and energy.
Okay, so then he moves up to matter.
Matter resembles God in having energy, but he's careful to say physical energy is very different from spiritual power. It's just a faint echo.
Then we get to the vegetable world. Plants, they resemble God because for the first time on this list, they are alive. We have biological life.
Right, and then you go up to animals. They have activity. Insects, he says, have this intense fertility and constant motion, which is a dim shadow of God's unceasing creativeness.
And higher mammals, they have instinctive affection. A mother bear protecting her cubs. It looks like love. It's a picture of God's love.
And then finally, you get to man. The highest of the animals. Man lives, loves, and reasons. This is the most complete resemblance to God we know of in the visible universe.
But, and this is the critical gap he points to, even the highest human life is only a shadow or a symbol of God's life.
Lewis says a picture of a landscape is like the landscape, but it is not the landscape. You can't walk in the picture. You can't smell the grass in the picture.
In the same way, our natural life is a picture of God's life, but it's not the same substance.
And this leads him to introduce two Greek words to distinguish these two different types of life.
This is one of the most famous parts of mere Christianity, I think. Bios and Zoe.
Yes, it's a very helpful distinction he draws. Bios is the biological sort of life.
It's what we have by nature. It's what all animals and plants have. It comes to us through our parents, the food chain, the air we breathe.
And what are its characteristics? Well, it's temporary. It tends to run down and decay.
It needs constant subsidies. Food, water, air, sleep, just to keep going. It's a life of constant maintenance and eventual decline.
That's bios. And the other word?
Zoe.
Zoe. This is the spiritual life. It is the life that is in God himself from all eternity.
It's the life that made the universe. It doesn't decay. It doesn't need subsidies or maintenance. It's self-existent and sovereign.
The comparison he makes is just stark. He says bios is like a photograph of a place. Zoe is the real place.
Bios is a statue. Zoe is a living man.
And here's the so what of the entire chapter. This is the point of all this theology. Like a man changing from having merely biological life to having Zoe spiritual life is as big a change as a carved stone statue turning into a real breathing man.
That is a staggering image. I mean, just picture that. You're in a room with a beautiful marble statue, and suddenly the stone softens, it turns to flesh, the chest heaves with a breath, the eyes blink, and it steps off the pedestal.
That's a miracle. That is a fundamental change of nature.
And that is precisely what Lewis says Christianity is all about. It's not about teaching the statue how to be a better statue.
It isn't about polishing the marble so it looks shinier or has better morals.
It's about the statue coming to life.
Which connects all the way back to that radical claim about becoming sons of God.
Right. We are not naturally sons of God in the same sense Christ is. We are made. We are the statues.
To become a son, we have to be begotten. Or to put it another way, adopted. We have to receive Zoe.
And I want to pause here and just connect this to our Reformed focus. This sounds an awful lot like the doctrine of regeneration, doesn't it?
It aligns with it perfectly. In Reformed theology, we believe that man in his natural state with only bios is spiritually dead in his trespasses and sins.
He's spiritually inanimate, like the statue.
Exactly. And no amount of moral advice or self-help can make a dead man live. You need a sovereign act of God to impart new life.
You need to be born again, which literally means to be begotten from above.
That's the language of John 3. So when Lewis talks about a person acquiring Zoe, he's describing in his own way that moment where the Holy Spirit applies the work of Christ to the believer and fundamentally changes their nature.
It's not just, I decided to be a better person. It's, I was stone, and now by grace I am flesh.
That's it. And this explains why the whole great moral teacher view of Jesus is so tragically insufficient.
You can shout moral instructions at a statue all day long.
Be kinder, stop being so hard, love your neighbor.
But the statue is stone. It cannot do it. It needs life first.
Then, and only then, can it begin to act like a living man.
Lewis brings this whole line of argument to a close with an incredibly evocative metaphor.
The world is a sculptor's shop. It's a great visual.
He says, and I love this line, this world is a great sculptor's shop. We are the statues. And there is a rumor going around the shop that some of us are someday going to come to life.
That gives me chills every time I read it. The idea that we're all walking around, bumping into each other, obsessed with our statue problems.
You know, a chip in the marble here, some dust on the shoulder there.
And meanwhile, the real story, the great rumor, is that we're all meant to wake up.
And the gospel is that rumor becoming reality. Christianity is the official announcement that the sculptor has entered the shop. And he isn't just carving anymore.
He's breathing into the stone. He is sharing his own Zoe with his creatures of bios.
So if we circle all the way back to the map analogy from the beginning.
The map tells us how this process works.
Right. The theology, the doctrines of the Trinity, the incarnation, the atonement. These are the descriptions of how the life of God, Zoe, comes down to us. The statues.
And if you throw away the map because you prefer the feeling of being in the shop, you might have a nice emotional experience.
But you'll remain a statue. You won't undergo the actual change.
It really redefines what practical religion means, doesn't it?
Completely. The world thinks practical means fixing society's problems right now with better policies or advice.
And Lewis says the most practical thing in the universe is becoming a new kind of creature that will live forever.
And paradoxically, it's only those new creatures, the living men, who can actually fix the world in any lasting way.
A world full of statues will just keep bumping into each other and cracking. You need living people to build a living society. So the impractical theology turns out to be the only thing that actually works in the long run.
This has been such a meaningful discussion. I feel like we've really gotten to the core of why Lewis matters, and more than that, why theology itself matters.
I agree. It's a powerful reminder that we shouldn't be afraid of the deep end of the pool. The map is there for a reason, to guide us.
So let's just recap quickly the big points we've covered today. First, theology is the science of God. It's not an academic luxury. It's the necessary map based on the collective experience of the church.
Second, moral advice is ultimately useless without the power to carry it out. Jesus isn't just a teacher. He is the source of a new kind of life.
Third, that crucial distinction between making and begetting. We are made like statues. Christ is begotten like a son. We are created in God's image, but we don't share his nature innately.
And finally, the goal of Christianity is not just better behavior, but a fundamental change of our nature. The change from bios, or biological life, to Zoe, spiritual life.
It's the change from being a constructed thing to being a begotten thing, from an artifact to a son.
That's the whole ball game.
And so here is a final thought for you to chew on as you go about your week. If we are currently, as Lewis suggests, just statues in a sculpture shop waiting to come to life, or maybe in the very early stages of that change, what does that make all our current real-world obsessions? We spend so much energy polishing our surfaces, accumulating money, seeking political power, worrying about our status and our image.
Polishing the marble.
Exactly. Are we just polishing a stone surface while ignoring the heartbeat that's trying to start inside? Are we so focused on being the best-looking, most admired statue in the gallery that we are missing the sculptor's invitation to become alive and walk out the door?
That is a question worth wrestling with.
Indeed it is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into mere Christianity. We hope this map helps you steer your own course a little better this week.
Until next time.
Take care.